Okay, so what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to try and show you a number of tools that have been mentioned recently, in either by people on the Telegram group who have asked for a demonstration of some of these tools, or were actually mentioned as part of the recent talk when we had some sessions on ICT and language teaching in a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, okay, the ideas that were being shown there were pretty basic, I thought, and they showed a way of building up people's skills. And when I started talking about the different tools and ideas, people were saying, well, I don't know what that is, or I'm not sure how that works. So I thought, okay, let's then, have a go at doing an online session that's a bit of a training session, but also something that hopefully you can begin to build up your skills or practice. For those of you, who are on summer holidays, which is a lot of you, you can practice some of these ideas maybe with your friends or your partners, and get familiar with it. And then maybe you can either use it as part of teacher education sessions, or maybe if you're in the kind of school where the children have access to these technologies, which some of you have, as I've learned over the last few months. Not everybody works in a remote school without access to technology. There are people who have these technologies, and some of you also teach online. So there's quite a mixed community here. So it seems unfair, to sort of always work with the lowest sort of common denominator, which is kind of the way my mind tends to work. I always think, well, we should be working, so everybody can access things. So I've been trying to demonstrate over this last week how you might begin to use a variety of tools in your teaching. So I've mixed together the Padlet with Telegram. So, and I've also used Mentimeter as well. So before the session, I sent you out last week, I sent you out a link to Mentimeter, and this is the link below. So if people haven't already answered that question, then you can do that now if you want. So it's simply a matter, there's a QR code there. Again, we talked a little bit about QR codes a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, or even if it was last week in the Telegram discussion session. I mentioned QR codes, and again, people are saying, well, what are they? Well, that's a QR code. And one of the things that Menti produces when it produces its surveys and its material is a QR code. And you need a mobile phone, and you need a QR code reader to be able to access that. But you don't have to do it like that. You can simply go to menti.com. So put it in a browser, do it on your phone, do it on a laptop, do it wherever you like, as long as you've got a browser access, and you put in that number 19557543, and that should take you to a question. And it was simply a way of me getting data so that I could run this session. So one of the things we talk about a lot in English language teaching is needs analysis. And what we often don't do is do it very far in advance. And one of the things that you often see is people at the beginning of a session like this asking information from people. Well, that's a bit late in a way. So if you can ask your questions in advance of a session, and obviously I could have done that directly on Telegram. I could have asked that question on Telegram and some people would have answered. Or you can use a tool like Mentimeter. So Mentimeter is a really nice tool. Like all of these tools, you can get restricted access to it for free. I mean, if you want all of the full-blown, all of the things I'm going to show you today, some of those things you probably won't be able to access all of it, or you won't be able to make many Mentimeters. Normally, I've restricted what I'm doing today to tools where you've got some limited access. So they're what they call, in the jargon, they call them freemium. So you've got limited access. It's normally the number of examples that you can use. So with Mentimeter, I think it's like 3 or 4 or 5. You can have 4 or 5 Mentimeter documents available, and then you have to start deleting them. With the same is true with Padlet. I think it's similar with other things. Of course, if you pay, you can have as many as you like, and you'll see on my screen when I show it to you that I do have paid access to this, so I can actually use a lot of it. So I'm in the lucky position that I still have access to some of the facilities that I used to have all the time at Manchester University. So what I'm showing you on the screen here is one of the outputs from the Mentimeter. So when I asked you that question, I got up until, you know, a couple of days ago, I'd had 22 responses. I mean, there are 3,000 people on the group, so you could hardly call this a representative sample. I'm not sure how many people are actually in here at the moment because I can't see all of the different, bits of information. But say, for example, we've got 50 people in here at the moment. That's 50% of the community that's in here. And I can look at this list and see, as you can see, that most people have some knowledge about these tools, but they probably don't use them. And they probably don't use them because you don't really have the sort of access that you might want to have to these tools in your classroom. So, you know, but for lots of people working in primary and secondary schools, these tools are pretty difficult to access for your learners. But maybe that's not true with all schools, as I said at the beginning, and also, you know, less likely to be true if you're working in further or higher education, where the older the children are, the more likelihood that they're going to have a good quality or a reasonable quality smartphone with some form of access to the internet. So I asked about, you know, the different tools, and I got that response. So that confirmed to me, I mean, I kind of knew that already. So in a way, I didn't absolutely need to do this, but it confirmed to me that what I was going to do in my session was appropriate, that I was going to show you these tools and give you some insights in how you might use them. So that's what I did. But one of the great things about this, and we live now in a world where data is, you know, as somebody said, you know, it's the new oil, and data helps you in so many different ways. So if you can use these kinds of tools to collect information from your learners, you're gonna be able to provide them with a much better set of materials or lessons, because you're meeting their needs, the needs as they express them. You know, you're not meeting needs just from, you know, the curriculum or from your own ideas. You're actually going directly to the source and saying, well, what do you need? And I realized that many of you are driven by you know, the systems that you work in and the textbooks that you're expected to use and how much you're expected to achieve, but within a particular kind of period of time. But if you still, it's worth asking your students questions about, you know, what their interests are or what their needs are, and if they can respond to you in this kind of way, then it's possible. And of course, you know, going back to gamification that Kalkadan was talking about, we can gamify this. This doesn't have to be done electronically. So you can take the ideas from Mentimeter and you can do them on paper. So it's not impossible to do this on paper. You can give every child, as they come into the classroom, a small slip of paper, and they can write their ideas down. Or they can work in small groups. You can make it into an activity. So a lot of these things can be made into an activity. So that, in essence, is the sorts of things, that's gamification, that idea of using digital technologies or our understandings of digital technologies, using those ideas to enable us to actually change our classroom teaching. Okay, so that's just an illustration. I'm going to show you them in a bit more. So this is the tool. Has a very simple interface. You can register for it. You don't need to register for it today. I'm simply going to show you some examples. So I'm now going to switch screens, and this is where it might get a bit iffy in terms of the session. So there are 36 participants, so maybe that's about a third of the community. Maybe not a third of you actually did reply to it. So I'm going to try and show you my desktop now and take you around some of these tools. So can everybody see my web browser, and can they see the word templates on the screen? You could put a thumbs up,
yes,
or a yes. Yeah, so people can see that okay? Okay, so
yes.
Okay, all right. So this is what you get when you go inside Mentimeter. So you register for it, you go inside, and you get offered a screen that looks like this. And you can see here, I've got a number of different examples. So so that's another one that I've done. So this is a follow-up. So they're quite simple. You can make them more complicated. That wasn't actually the one I wanted to show you, to be honest. So I thought I would have a look at this one. This one's called Getting to Know Your Teacher. And this is just a template. So I picked this up. I looked at this earlier today. So I'm going to run it, and then I'm going to show you how I created it. All right. So let me just get, so if I present that. So can you see the code down there? So if you go to menti.com and you use that code 66074152, you could put that in the chat, Steve. I can't actually see the chat at the moment. It's disappeared off my screen. Oh, there it is. So if you go to menti.com, that's it. Thanks, Steve.
It's done.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So you can run this as like a kind of presentation. So at the moment, you probably can't see. All right, so there's just another one. So again, here's one of these QR codes, and I'll show you about QR codes a bit later. But you can simply, if you've got a QR code reader, you can simply point your camera at the QR code reader and get into it as well. So that takes you directly in. Okay. So we've got one person in, several people are coming in, 3 players are ready. So more people like to come and get in, so I can see 4 people in. So this is where, you know, these things take a little bit of time. So I have allowed a bit more time on this session than maybe you would allow on a normal session, because it takes a bit of time. When we tried to do breakout rooms in Zoom a few months ago, we really struggled to get the breakout rooms to work because people don't necessarily have that great internet connectivity. So you can see people are beginning to arrive and people are disappearing again. So I'm actually going to start the quiz. So for those in there, if you'd like to try and answer, you've got 15 seconds. Let's see whether this is actually, everyone has voted. There you go. All right, so So some of you probably know me a bit better than others. So I live in Manchester. I live in Manchester in the UK. All right. So that's that question. So I'm from Manchester. This is a way, it's a way of introducing yourself to your learners. So imagine, you do this at the beginning of the year when you're new, you're new to your class. They might not know the answers to the questions at the beginning of the year, and then you could try it later in the year and see whether they paid any attention. All right. So where did I live when I was younger? So you've got the whole world to go at. Any guesses? So you can put a pin on the map. Again, you'd have to show people how to do this. I'm just trying to give you some ideas. So people are putting pins in. It doesn't matter if you can't answer these questions. You can always have a look at them later. So do you see how it works? All right. So 2 people have got me living in somewhere in North Africa. Some people have got me in East Africa, and a couple of people are getting pretty close. So I'm gonna show you where I lived when I was younger. All right. So I lived in Mongolia. I went to one of my first overseas jobs as an English language teacher was in Mongolia. So people who pick sort of southern Russia, that's pretty good. All right. All right. So I can go back to that, and I can press the next one. So did I press go the wrong way? So okay, well, it's a good try. Maybe a lot of English people are known for having dogs, but I don't have any pet at all. So that was a bit of a trick question. I don't own a pet. My grandparents had pets when I was a child, and I played with dogs when I was a child. And in fact, we did have a cat when I was a child as well. So somebody got that right. But basically, why does it say dog as correct? I must have got that wrong on the slide. Sorry, my mistake. I don't actually have the answer. So there you go. So there's the leaderboard. So this is the kind of thing that we've talked about in gamification. So Rashidat mentioned this, and if you've seen Shirin Soyuz's presentation that she did, then you've got that idea that we can take the leaderboards. Now, again, this is Mentimeter's version of it. So I am going to reinforce this idea that you can do this on Mentimeter, but you could also take these ideas into your classroom, and you could ask them those questions. Doesn't have to be done on this tool. It's more fun for the kids if you can do, or the adults if you work with adults. And Daniel is probably feeling pretty good, that he's got good score there. Hopefully he's feeling good about that. And Rashidat up there as well. So, and some people who can't get in are probably feeling very frustrated at the moment. So we've only got 9 players in, so I probably won't carry on. So we'll just do this one to sort of show you a different question. So this one asks you to type something in. So you can type in single words, or the other ones obviously have been multiple choice, so that there are different varieties. So I picked this example because it shows the different ways that you can do things. All right, so I'm not quite sure how quickly it's going to do this. Jogging, reading, and swimming. Okay, all right. Oh, some more things coming in. Dancing. Wow. Researching. All right, so this becomes a Wordle type thing, and so it shows you the answers that are most sort of central. So reading is the center there. So yes, I do like reading, and I do like photography. I do like rugby actually as well. But the main thing that I do is play music. So people obviously, maybe because you don't see me necessarily on a screen very often, you don't necessarily see my background. I'll show you my background in a minute, and maybe you can see that. All right. Okay, so Daniel appears to be the winner. So I'm going to stop that now for now. Okay, so that you can see how you actually create these things. So let me just stop that. Let me get out of that. All right, so you can. So I used a template to do that. So so it's also asking me for feedback as well. So there you go. All of these things have similar things. So you can then either make use of the existing templates, or you can create ones of your own. And there are some quite sophisticated templates in there. So if I click New Presentation, it gives you lots of different examples of different templates, but you can also go for a blank. So just to play devil's advocate, I'm going to go for a blank so you can see what the different possibilities are. And it was very interesting. I went to a meeting earlier in the week, and somebody was using these scales, these things here, to collect data from us at this meeting, and then he was feeding that in a very clever way into his own software. He was a computing engineer, so not surprisingly, he had a lot of things to do. So, you simply you create the slides. Let me go back to the blank, create a new presentation because and you can create a blank presentation again, and let's put in the word cloud because that's easier to do. And then you type in your questions. So what might it be? How are you enjoying things so far? How are you enjoying things so far? All right. So you can change the number of entries that people can put in. So people can, you can just make it 1 if you want. So if you want just to sort of limit people, and you can put in pictures and all sorts of other things. And then if you want, so this is making it, so the way I did the first one was just to create one question and got you to answer it about your knowledge of the topic. So you can just do it as a single slide, or like with the other one, you can make it into multiple slides. So I probably need to give it an example 1. And then I can present that. All right. So I can do it in a number of different ways. I can either give you tell you to go to menti.com and use that code, or I can send you a link, or I can create one of these QR codes. So it has lots of features, Menti. Mentimeter, so I keep calling it Menti. Mentimeter has a lot of different features, and you can create more or less sophisticated materials, or you can create, you can create sort of simple, sort of single type activities. Okay, so let me just. That will do for now, so because I'm conscious of time. So people are obviously sort of struggling to get in and out, so which is a bit of a shame. So that's Mentimeter, and as I said, you can, you can use different ways of accessing these tools. You can either give people a code, which is generally what people do, or I guess if a lot of people are in a room with mobile phones, you can use things like the QR codes. And I'll come back to QR codes. So people struggling with sound, Steve, or is it me that's causing the problem? Or so other people, I see people are putting in reactions in the chat.
I can hear you very well from my end,
right.
So I guess it's fine.
All right. So okay, so people have kind of gone on and as they would normally do, and actually put information in the chat, which is of course another way of doing it. So if you don't have access to these tools, you can gamify it in the same kind of way. So typically, when we do these kinds of sessions, we say, and I don't want you to do this because I'm going to do it in an alternative way. In the chat box, type who you are, where you're from, and tell us about the learners you work with, and people will happily type in there. Now, one of the issues with that is that you don't get to save that material. So this is why I used Padlet. So Padlet, as some of you will have seen, is a nice tool for collecting information about people, about providing people with ideas, I'm sorry, I'm seeing the Telegram and I'm seeing people are struggling to get in. So there will be a recording, of course, but it's a shame that people can't get in. But I will carry on. So Padlet is a nice tool that allows you to do interact in various kinds of ways. So again, you can access Padlet through a QR code, or you can access it through a link. And so depending on where you're sharing it, you would make a choice about how you do that. So you see here, you've got a mixture of materials. You've got video. So Rashidat put in a video of herself. Tina had a nice picture. Obaje also put in a nice picture of himself, presumably at a graduation or at some kind of nice dance that he went to. But one of the things about Padlet is that you can interact with it. So if I show you how it works now, let me just switch. Let me switch this off again and go back to sharing my screen. If I go now to, so here you can see, hopefully see the live Padlet. Can you all see the live Padlet? Can people see that? Can people say that in the chat, or somebody say it? So can you see the live Padlet? Yes, no?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the live Padlet, and you'll see here that what I've done, what I've tried to do, is interact with people. So this is if you're an online teacher, if you're somebody like me who spent almost their whole career teaching at a distance, teaching online, teaching with technology, you kind of learn these things, but maybe it's not second nature to other people. So here you go. We have a number of different interactions here. Some people have interacted, even though I've asked people to add material, other people haven't. So do you see, in order to make it kind of work, you have to engage with it, because it's not like a regular classroom. We all get really frustrated in classrooms, don't we, when you say something to people and they put their heads down and they don't respond, either because they don't know the answer or they don't want to look silly or whatever it happens to be. So the same is exactly true in an online space, that you do need to have this interactivity. Now, maybe with a massive group, potentially, maybe I would have got lucky and got 1,000 people putting things in here. And of course, it would have been impossible for me to have interacted. But there's only 26 here, so maybe a typical kind of class size who've engaged with this. And as a result, you can then you can interact with people in the same way that we try to do Telegram. But the advantage of this is that it's permanent. That it updates, but it sits there, and I can go back. So if I've got my community people, I can go back and I can get people, and I can look at who people are and what they do, and I can check, because again, when you work, particularly when you work at a distance, trying to remember who everybody is can be kind of tough. So let's have a look then. So let me just show you this one. So here's another example. This is one that was used on a course that I taught on in the past. All right, so this was done as introductions, and people put in their introductions. They told us about themselves. Some people put in pictures, and so on and so forth. So there you go. You've got this group of people here. These are all academics at the University of Manchester, and giving us an idea. So if I want to find out who somebody is who's posting something, I can quickly look at that. So this then is my dashboard. And what's interesting is that Sandrine, who I don't know whether Sandrine's actually in the group, because I can't see who presenters it. She's already created her own project. All right, so there you go. So we've already got a bit of interaction going on there. So this is something that she's had a go at, and anybody can do this. And I'm pretty sure that you can create 3 or 4 different projects. It's irritating because you have to get rid of a project and create a new one, but maybe you won't use them that often. Before I had full access to this, I used to create, I used to use the unpaid version, and I used to make it work. It wasn't easy to do it, and I would be irritated that I would lose things, but I could make it work. So you've got lots of options in terms of making the Padlet. So you've got different, to start with, you've got different options. So you can have things. The first one I created didn't have sections, but you can put it into different sections. So you could put up material, teaching material in different sections, and add material to it. So for example, maybe I might want some material on writing, I might want some material on reading, I might want some material on listening, and I can add different things. So I can add, maybe a text here, I can add something in here, and do it. And one of the great things is that, do you see here, you can upload a file, you can take a picture, you can put links in, you can do all sorts of things. So search for an image, and there are more different kinds of attachments. So the different things you can upload. So you put in a subject. So we call this reading. This is this week's reading text. See the link to this week's reading text. So you could do this for homework. So you could flip the classroom, as people talk about it. All right. So and then if you make it, depending on how you change the characteristics of this, you can allow people to do more and less. Now, there's a section 2, and I can call that listening, or whatever it happens to be. So there are different formats. So if I look here, so this is the standard settings symbol. You can change a lot of the settings here. All right. So, for example, who types? Can you allow comments? So I will allow comments on this, and you'll see that it will change dynamically. So I can require approval. So if I'm worried that my students are going to post inappropriate things, I can require approval. So every message that's put up there, I can approve. I can stop people swearing, and so on. All right. So you can make a lot of different changes to this. You can make it safer. You can make it all anonymous. You can make everybody create an account so everybody everybody is kind of recorded. You can change the colors and so on and so forth. You don't have to have that horrible kind of color there. You can have a more friendly color. So that ought to be a yellow color that is better readable, but it's not very good on the screen. So it's simply a kind of whiteboard, if you like, or a multicolored board, and you can add anything you want to these boards, and the students can also add things to the boards as well. So that's something that you do. And I picked up on this. I mean, it's a tool that I've always liked, but it's certainly something that a lot of people use in classrooms. So that's something to have a look at. So I'm going to discard that because I don't really want it. I'm going to keep admitting people, as you can see, that you see. If I click off that and I go back. And the other thing that we can do is we can actually join a Padlet. So you can have something where you give people a link and they can then join it. So it's perfectly possible to get all of your students linked into this. Okay, so that's Padlet. Let me go back to my presentation. I see there's quite a lot of information coming through in the chat. Anything? People are present. The people can see it. The trouble is when I have the things displaying on the screen in front of me, I can't actually sort of see the chat. So, all right. So let's go back to my slides. Maybe we should have a little pause. Let's go back to. Can you see my slides okay? Can everybody see the slides? Because we're back. We're not at the Padlet now. We're not at the live Padlet. Yes. Is people saying yes? Yes, they are. Okay. All right. So again, as I say, you can link to these tools in different kinds of ways. So, all right. So finally, you joined, Joseph. Well done. Okay. So then QR codes. So I mentioned QR codes a few times, and essentially a QR code is essentially a barcode. I mean, I don't know whether people are familiar and use barcodes. Barcodes are a regular part of my life. So when I go to the local supermarket and I buy something, it has a code on it. I show the code to the reader, and then it works out what the price is. Do you have the same kind of practices in supermarkets near you? Do you use QR codes in that kind of way? So sometimes you see these at museums as well, or art galleries. So what this is simply it takes the information. We hardly see them. Okay, right, well, fair enough. Yeah, barcodes, not QR codes. All right, so barcodes are essentially the same sort of tool, really. A barcode or a QR code, they're very similar. But the point about them is it means that you can put these codes in places, and what's happened over the years is increasingly publishers have begun to put these kinds of codes into books so that children who do have access to internet in the classroom, have a mobile phone or a tablet or something like that, they can get access to materials. I'm sure you do. I see that somebody says they face difficulties using barcodes and QR codes, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of how it works. So if I go back, so that's a QR code. Let me just. All right, so let me just go back one slide. Whoops, wrong way. Come on, go back. Okay, so if I stop sharing that, I can show you how to create a QR code. So I need to share my screen again. So this is a QR code generator. So it's simply a matter of getting your QR code and putting it into the URL. So for example, if I wanted to take Sandrine's QR code, her URL, and distribute it on the group so that everybody could have a look at it, I could put it in there and it creates the QR code. So if you've got a phone with a QR code reader on it, you point it at this QR code, then it would read it. So in order to use it, I would have to download it. So it's as simple as that. The software does this for you. It simply creates these codes. So that's one way of doing it. So another way of doing it, so if I stop sharing that one, and I go back to my slides. So another way of doing it is to use what are called tiny URLs. Have you heard this term? Have people heard the idea of tiny URL? So they're called that because the original idea was called the first piece of software that was produced that actually did that was actually called tiny.url, and it still exists and it's still free. All right, but I use this one as an alternative. And it's simply a way of, it's simply a way of shortening your URL, because one of the big problems, say for example, I use a lot of Google, and if I create a Google document, it has a massively long, put it on the screen, a massively long URL, and you can't give that to your students easily. So if maybe they have mobile phones in the classroom or tablets or whatever, unless you have a projector or you have some way of sending it to them, it's very difficult. Maybe you have a WhatsApp group for your class if you're that sophisticated. But you can simply write this on the blackboard, and it embeds the code that you've got. So we can go back, and you've got Sandrine's Padlet. So if you were working maybe with another teacher in another country, which is what was talked about in the ICT presentation, the idea of linking up classes, class in Spain, a class in Taiwan. The class teacher in Spain creates her Padlet. She gets her students to add their material to the Padlet, and then she creates a tiny URL. She sends it to the teacher in Taiwan. The teacher in Taiwan gives that tiny URL to the students in the Taiwanese class, and they click on it and they load it. So QR codes and tiny URLs are the same idea. So if you click on this, this will actually take you to my personal website. So I created a URL to take you to that. It's actually, it's a very easy URL to remember anyway, but I'll give it to you anyway. So it's a very easy URL to remember if you know who I am, but it was just as an example. So, but normally it's not used for very short, precise, pithy URLs like that. It's used for kind of Google. And for a long time, Google had its own shortening software, and it stopped using it. I'm not quite sure why. It was very, very useful. But so I've gone back to using these. So they're very helpful in class. So these are simply ways of giving information to people in a short and precise way. So you're not struggling in a classroom to give out that information. All right. So either the QR codes, or if you don't have access to the QR codes, then you've got other things as well. Hold on. It's going back. Sorry. Let me go back to last viewed. Go back to previous. Actually, no, it doesn't do that. It goes to, sorry, my mistake. So this one goes to another Padlet. So let me just put that, sorry, my mistake. I've lost track of where I am in my talk. So if I put that in the chat, so if you put in tiny.cc, and then it's IT79VZ. All right. So if you go to that, it should take you to, let me just try it. Let me stop sharing that. And if we go to, I share my screen again. To that. So if you put in tiny.cc, and then you can see where I created it there. Right, so it should take you to another Padlet. So would you like to try that? Would you like to try going to that Padlet and adding your ideas in? So you can click again on the plus, and you can put in ideas about the tools you've seen so far. Would you like to try and do that? So you can see people joining at the top. So again, if I'm a distance teacher, I can see that people are joining my Padlet. Just have a look at the chat, see what's going on. Now, what I've done is I've changed the settings on this. So do you see? You've got up and down, so you can vote on these. So if I click that, and the more people that vote on something, it will move up. All right. So again, you can create this leaderboard. You know, again, we're gamifying this learning, but we're gamifying a game in a way by sort of adding things to it. So you can change the functionality of these boards to make them more or less useful. So as a teacher, you can see. So maybe not everybody wants to type something because they don't, you know, particularly if they're quite low-level English learners, they don't want to actually type something. Then they, you know, they can just, you know, click on somebody's post. All right, so they can click and add to it. So I can only add once. So if other people, it will move it up. Yeah. So, you know, inbuilt within these tools is sort of an element of the gamification that Kalkadan was talking about last week. So you've got those kinds of things, you know, ready built into them. So the idea of voting and upscaling things. So I think people are probably struggling to access all of these different tools, which is a shame. But, you know, that I knew that would be the case for a lot of people. So Kalkadan is asking about the meeting passcode on the Telegram group. So I think people are sort of struggling to get in still, which is a shame, but it's the nature of the way that the technology works. So, you know, again, why would I do that as a teacher? So if I'm running a session, particularly if I'm running a session online, but it's also valid within a large classroom. So if you have a large classroom with a lot of children who have access to mobile phones, which is probably not going to be likely, but if you did have that sort of situation, or even if you've got a normal sized classroom, you can get feedback. And you can use Mentimeter for that as well. You can use Mentimeter and you can set up, you can ask them questions, you could do a little quiz in order for them to actually be able to respond. Okay, well, I mean, Chinasa is saying they needed more information. Well, people could look back to actually view the video. So another great idea is the ability to actually look at materials. And again, I don't mind if people want this. I'm happily run an additional session and just focus on one tool, and everybody can practice it. What I'll do on Telegram is I'll encourage you to have a go at creating your own Padlets, and we can all interact with them. So you know, it's something that you can try out. As I say, some of you are going to be on holiday now. So if you have not very much to do, then, you know, that's something that you can think about trying. What do I think about using Google questionnaires? Google questionnaires are just as good. Yes, of course. You know, I mean, in fact, you know, in classes I ran regularly at the University of Manchester, that's exactly what I would teach people how to use, because I recognize that for a lot of people, a tool like a Mentimeter is not something that they're necessarily going to have easy access to. So I would happily use Google questionnaires. Of course, you know, if you've got access to Microsoft now, they also have questionnaires. So if you're in a world where Microsoft rules your classroom, you have, you know, Microsoft tools available in your school or in your college or university, then of course you can use Microsoft tools as well. So it doesn't matter what tool you use, it's the thinking through of the ideas that matter. I mean, I think Padlet particularly has some useful functionality that maybe some of the other tools don't have. Mentimeter has become really quite sophisticated. I mean, watching this guy that we had doing the presentation he did on Wednesday, feeding in you know, complex information into his own software was actually quite eye-opening. So you know, you can use them in very, very clever ways. All right, so there are lots of possibility. No problem. I try and monitor these things as best I can. So here was another piece of software that got mentioned when we had the presentation I've talked about. This is called Speakpipe. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to share my browser again. So I thought this sounded like a really nice, simple tool. It's not quite as simple as I thought it was, but it's still not a bad tool and works pretty well. So this is Speakpipe. So this is a way of creating small bits of spoken language. And the way that the presenter talked about this was that she said she used it to add different responses to her Padlet. But actually, I mean, I wondered about that, because if you look at Padlet does actually have the ability. So I'm not sure whether I can do that on that one. Let me just look at a different one. So if I try and add another one here, you can actually you can record sound on a Padlet directly. So Padlet allows you to take a picture. I don't know whether you can actually start that. So if I allow that, I'm not sure whether it's going to break. Probably won't work, but under normal circumstances, you ought to be able to do that. But so if I click on the more button here, I can actually do audio recording anyway as part of that. So let me allow it. Let's see if it remembers that. Okay, so there you go. So I can actually do a recording. So it's already recording me now. So there you go. You can see, maybe you can see the audio booth. It says I have a beautiful voice, but of course, that's just, you know, a con trick. So if I start the recording, all right, so you can see that you can actually add a recording directly into Padlet. So actually Padlet has all of that kind of facility. So, you know, if you wanted students to do some homework and you wanted them to do a recording, they could record directly onto Padlet. So maybe that was something that wasn't available when there's a speaker who talked about this thing. I'm not going to save it just for now, but that's something that you could add to it there. All right, so that's perfectly possible to do. So let's just look briefly at this Speakpipe. So I can record an outgoing message and share it with your audience. So let me try and do that so that you can actually see how this works. So create your voice channel. So you can create this voice channel, or you can have a voicemail page. So you can use it in various kinds of ways. So I'm going to start the recording and I'm going to see what it does. So I'm speaking into it now. I've got a maximum duration of 90 seconds, which isn't very long, but it is, you know, it's a decent amount of time for maybe students to say a little bit about themselves. They can practice some ideas, and they can rehearse it, and then they can add it to their material. All right. So if I give it a title, so I call that, I think I've already done test 1 and 2, so I'll save it. And then I've got a link. So I'm going to copy that link. I don't know whether you can hear this. Can you? You probably can't hear that because I haven't sort of set things up. Let me just stop sharing a second. Let me share the screen again and share the sound so you can actually hear that. Let me do that. If I share that again. Oops. Sorry. Share that one. Can you hear that? 90 seconds, which isn't very long, but it is, you know, it's a decent amount of time for maybe students to say a little bit about themselves. They can practice some ideas, and they can rehearse it, and then they can add it to their material. All right. So there you go. So you could also send that URL as well as putting it on to onto your Padlet. You could put it on. So if I do that now, so I put on my link. So as I was saying, you know, in some ways this is a bit pointless really when you can actually do that directly through Padlet anyway. But there it is. Let me just say a piece of my homework, my spoken homework. Let's call it that. I'll publish that. I'm going to start the recording and I'm going to see what it does. So I'm speaking into it now. I've got a maximum duration of 90. Okay. Hopefully you all heard that. Did everybody hear that? Okay. There's stuff going on in the chat. Yes, you can hear the recording. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, right. That's good. So, you know, there are different ways of doing it. So, I mean, I would sort of think probably if I were going to use Padlet in that kind of way, I might not use Speakpipe for that, but you can use Speakpipe in other ways. So it's quite possible to as I say, you know, we had a message from Abaji who created one as well and he put that up onto the Padlet as well. So yeah, so let me just Let me look at my inbox. No, I don't want to look at my inbox. Okay, there we are. So there are different options, as I said. You've got this voice channel, so you can record something and share it. You can create a personal page, and you can share that page, it says, with your customers, but with your learners. So you could create a dialogue on the page. And then you've got various ways of embedding Speakpipe into different environments. And so you can have something that's added to your web page, but that means you've got to have a web page to do that too. So that there are lots of possibilities. So I think maybe the actual voice channel, if you've got, if you want to, you could add those things to something like Telegram, although obviously you could do that with Telegram. So in a way, you know, it's a bit sort of, you know, maybe it hasn't got as much functionality, useful functionality, as perhaps, you know, it could have done in the past. But I like this idea of a voicemail page. So, you know, you just simply have an engagement with your students. Right, so that's a fairly nice, simple-minded piece of software that you can make use of. All right, so we're getting near the end now, and time is getting on. I'm conscious this is a bit more than the normal hour that you're used to. So just do that. So that's Speakpipe. So what I'm not going to do, I was going to sort of take you around Kahoot and Quizlet as well, and sort of create something in Kahoot and Quizlet. But when I looked back, and I haven't used them for a while, when I looked back at Kahoot and Quizlet, it was very limited what you could do with them. So whoever it was that asked me about using Google Google Forms, you know, using the question system in Google, you could replace Kahoot and Quizlet activities with, you know, you could replace those kinds of activities using Google. And, you know, again, the sorts of things that they allow you to do, if you look at the structure, it's worth logging in. If you get 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, something like that, in the summer where you're a bit bored, have a look at one of them. Probably Kahoot is the one that people talk about most. I mean, they are motivating tools. They do, you know, they do get kids and even adults quite excited because it's competitive. So you've got that competitive element in the game. It also has, like we saw in Mentimeter, it has leaderboards, and you know, you know, you can add the other things in as well as you want. So you can bring those elements that Kalkadan was talking about, those gamification elements, in from something like Kahoot or Quizlet, and you could use Google Forms as a way of doing that as an alternative. So you don't have to pay for these things. I mean, you obviously have to give up your data to Google, but you don't have to pay for any of these things. You can happily do those things on your own. Okay, so I kind of finished there really, but I'm just going to do a final Mentimeter. So just to sort of demonstrate again the kind of power of the tool. Hold on, let me just get back to where I want to be. Not there. Sorry. Get rid of my slides for a second. Let me share my screen. So if I go back to Mentimeter here, and I'm going to do an assess with an exit ticket. So I've created this exit ticket. So again, if you think back to other sessions we've had, we did a lot about assessment for learning, which was very interesting. And people talked a lot about assessment for learning. And so I thought I would create an exit ticket. People talk quite a lot about exit tickets. So again, if you go to Menti, menti.com, or if you've got a QR code reader, you click on the QR code and you put in the code 4995 0285. So Steve, could you pop that into the chat for me? The code, or I can do it myself. Oh, you've already done it. You're too quick. Everybody needs a Steve to quickly type things in. Okay. So I need then, so if you've got that code, so I've set this up as text-based. Initially, one of these questions is text-based. So what are the main takeaways from today? So what have you got to take away, those of you who can get in? Right, so we can put these up. There we go. So we can do this in real time. So we can either do it in real time, or I can send this at the end of a lesson and review what I've done. So I could have, at the end of the session, I could have a quiz about the subject area. So I could give you a quiz to test to see how many people have understood the learning outcomes, how many people have actually learned the material I was hoping that they were going to learn. So I can do that. So yeah, they're an alternative to Google Forms, but Google Forms is just as good. I mean, the slight disadvantage about Google Forms is it's a little bit, we might say in English, clunky. You know, you have to. It's not quite as, you know, easy to use. You have to work a bit harder to get the same kind of results out of Google Forms. But still, you know, I have in the past always used Google Forms as an alternative to Mentimeter, because you know, one of the things that I believe is that you should try and make things as accessible as possible to the learners that we're working with. And I've always worked with learners well, a lot of my learners come from contexts where they don't necessarily have massively good high-tech facilities. Not true with everybody, but with some people in my community. So let me just, there's another slide here. So you can have a number of different questions. And one of the slight disadvantages of this is that, you know, if people can't actually answer quickly and you move on, they don't get a second response. So one of the ways of getting around this is to have kind of individual slides. I find that a bit fiddly, but basically I can see whether people actually respond to this. So maybe those two questions are a bit close together. So you can have a number of questions. So let's see what the next slide is. What was unclear? All right. So I am conscious of time. So I'll put up some of these bits of material up onto Telegram so that you've got an opportunity to answer them. And I see that people are putting in information in the on the chat anyway, which is a perfectly good alternative. There's no problem about using the tools that are embedded in something like Zoom. I mean, Zoom does have polls and questions. It has different kinds of questions embedded in it as a feature. So in some ways, you know, why bother with something like Mentimeter or Google Forms when you can do it directly through Zoom anyway. So it's a question I quite often ask myself. Speakpipe is just simply a way of making short recordings. Melanie, that's you know. Okay. So if you join the community of practice, I will put up some more information about the different quizzes. I'll put up the quizzes. So essentially, Karamar, you go to menti.com and into menti.com, you put the code. And if you click on that code, enter it, you get the question. And the problem with it, part of the problem with it is that unless you just do individual questions and then you move on, people can't answer the first question. Well, I'm glad you made it in the end, Kalkutan. But there will be a recording. So if people want to have a look at the recording and then ask any questions, then you're quite welcome to do that. Yeah, there you go. How do you get the Menti code? The Menti code, when you create the presentation within inside Mentimeter, it automatically generates a code. So if you create one of the examples, so let me quickly show you. So if we go back to this one, do you see here? It's got the code at the top there. So when you create these bits of material, it actually creates that code for you. So the software creates the code. All right, so it's there. So we've actually got 15 responses now, so maybe. Okay, so anybody got any other questions? Let me just look back at the chat. Anybody want to put a hand up and ask a question? We've still got a few minutes if you want. I'm conscious that it's Friday evening, and you know, you've got families and life and things like that, but okay. Akalu, yes. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question? You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, Sir Gary.
Yeah, go for it. I can hear you. Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thank you very much for your clear presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Even if I just joined you lately, the contents were very nice, and I need if it is happened in another session.
Okay.
It will be all right if there is another session.
Okay, I'm happy to run another session. We can do a follow-up, and we can spend a bit more time focusing on different tools. Yeah.
And the other thing, what I need to raise is that is there something about academic just phrase bank? I need it. Academic phrase bank.
Academic phrase bank. I've heard of that, but I'm not sure what that is. Does anybody know what the academic phrase bank is? I can look it up for you. If you ask that question on the Telegram group, we can chase it down for you if nobody knows what that is.
Okay, and the other thing is all these materials, I need them if they are compiled it, and then if you just share us via the Telegram. Yeah,
they will be. As Steve has said, that there will be, you know, there will be links to the video, and I'm quite happy. Steve hasn't got the slides at the moment, but I'm quite happy to send them to him. I'm not sure how useful the slides are.
Thank you. And last, thank you very much in advance once again. Thank you for your beloved presentation.
Well, thank you. Okay. All right, so I think probably maybe time to stop. Steve, what do you think? Oh no, we've got Ike.
Yeah. Thank you. If there
Just
are
have this final, let's have this
more
final question from Ike. He did have his hand up, or she did have a hand up before. I don't know whether it's a he or a she. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. If you unmute yourself, Ike.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Hello.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
I really wanted to know whether these apps, yes, the apps you have can be downloaded as a kind of app in one's phone. And what is the possibility of repeating this lecture over and over for some of us that have been introduced to that, to master the apps and their application? Because I've come to notice that in this era of a digital world, there is no way one can not do without
Okay. Well, I mean,
the apps in teaching and learning, you know. So I don't know, there is a way you can repeat this lecture with these wonderful apps, can master them and apply them in the classroom.
sure. I mean, what we can do if you want, and I'll talk to Steve about it, is we can maybe have a focus session on just one of the apps. So to answer your question about the availability of the apps, all of these apps are available on mobile phones. So you need, if you've got an Android phone or you've got an iPhone, they're available. You go to the different stores, either the Apple store or you go to the Android store, and you can download them. So they're perfectly usable on mobile phones. I have them loaded on my phone. Okay, I think probably we'll stop now. Steve's thing's got some background noise, so he's worried about sort of coming on for too long. But thank you very much for coming on a Friday evening. And I can set up. I'm actually away on holiday for 2 weeks. I'm away from Wednesday next week for about 10 days. So I'll put some postings up on the Telegram about that, but we can find some time where we can do some focus sessions and then maybe get you guys to actually try out some of these apps for yourselves in your classrooms, and for, you can show us your results, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve here. So, please have a go. I'm happy to carry on explaining it. You can have another look at the video when it comes out. I will send Steve the slides, although I'm not entirely sure that they're going to be, that much use to you, but you're quite welcome to them. Yeah, so thank you all for coming, and enjoy your holidays, as I'm going away and enjoy mine. But I will say a bit more about that from tomorrow.